I never thought my life would take such a twisted turn. My name is David, and I was happily married to Emily for 5 years. We lived in a cozy suburban house, our little piece of paradise. Emily and I had a routine, a rhythm to our life that was comforting and familiar. But everything changed when Emily's mother, Veronica, moved in with us. Veronica had just been released from prison after serving time for a crime she claimed she didn't commit. Emily and I wanted to support her, to help her get back on her feet. We welcomed her into our home, offering her a place to stay while she adjusted to life outside. I thought it would be a temporary situation, but as days turned into weeks, it became clear that Veronica wasn't leaving anytime soon. Veronica was a striking woman, even in her 50s. She had piercing green eyes that seemed to look right through you, and a confident demeanor that made her stand out. Her presence was commanding, and I found myself drawn to her in a way that surprised me. She carried herself with a mix of grace and defiance that I found intriguing and unsettling. At first, our interactions were casual, polite exchanges over dinner or while watching TV. But as time went on, an unspoken tension began to build between us. It was in the way she would look at me, a lingering glance that lasted just a bit too long, or the way her hand would brush against mine when we passed each other in the hallway. These small moments started to ignite something inside me, a spark that I couldn't ignore. One evening, Emily was working late, and Veronica and I found ourselves alone in the living room. We shared a bottle of wine, and our conversation drifted from casual topics to more personal ones. Veronica opened up about her time in prison, the loneliness she felt, and her struggles to reconnect with the outside world. I listened, feeling a mix of sympathy and curiosity. As the night progressed, the atmosphere grew more intimate. Veronica's hand brushed against mine, and I felt a jolt of electricity. I looked into her eyes and saw a longing that mirrored my own. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed her. It was a brief, hesitant kiss, but it awakened something inside both of us. From that moment on, we couldn't stop thinking about each other. We stole glances whenever Emily wasn't looking and found excuses to be alone together. The thrill of our secret felt intoxicating, and I couldn't resist Veronica's allure. She was unlike anyone I had ever met, and the forbidden nature of our attraction only made it more exciting. Veronica and I started to take more risks. One afternoon, while Emily was out running errands, Veronica cornered me in the kitchen. She pressed her body against mine, her breath hot against my neck. "I can't stop thinking about you," she whispered, her lips brushing against my ear. My heart raced as I pulled her closer, our bodies pressed together in a heated embrace. We kissed passionately, our hands exploring each other's bodies with a hunger that I had never experienced before. Veronica's touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. I ran my hands through her hair, pulling her even closer as our kisses grew more intense. The world outside disappeared, leaving only the two of us and the overwhelming desire that consumed us. The guilt was there, lurking in the back of my mind, but it wasn't enough to stop me. I loved Emily, but my attraction to Veronica was something I couldn't control. It was a fire that burned too brightly to be extinguished. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word only fueled the flames. One night, after Emily had gone to bed, Veronica and I found ourselves alone again. We sat on the couch, the tension between us palpable. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Veronica looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of desire and determination. "I know," she replied, her hand resting on my thigh. "But I can't help myself. I want you, David. I need you." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, and before I knew it, we were kissing again. This time, there was no hesitation. We gave in to our desires completely, our bodies moving together in a frenzied dance of lust. We made love on the couch, our movements urgent and desperate. Every touch, every kiss, every moan brought us closer together. The forbidden nature of our affair made it all the more exhilarating. I lost myself in Veronica, her body a perfect match for mine. We fit together like two pieces of a puzzle, our passion consuming everything in its path. As we lay there afterward, tangled in each other's arms, I knew that our affair couldn't continue without devastating consequences. The guilt was becoming unbearable, and the risk of being caught was too high. But in that moment, with Veronica's body pressed against mine, I couldn't bring myself to care. The only thing that mattered was the intense connection we shared, a connection that I couldn't deny. Our stolen moments grew more frequent and daring. Veronica and I would sneak away during Emily's work hours or late at night when she was asleep. Each encounter was more passionate than the last. Veronica's touch was electric, and her kisses left me breathless. We explored each other's bodies with a hunger that I had never experienced before. The days following that first kiss with Veronica were a blur. My mind was constantly filled with thoughts of her, the way her lips felt against mine, the electricity that flowed between us. It was a feeling I couldn't shake, no matter how hard I tried. Emily noticed my distraction, but I brushed it off, telling her work was stressing me out. In reality, it was Veronica who consumed my every thought. One evening, Emily was working late again. Veronica and I were alone in the house, the silence between us filled with unspoken tension. We sat across from each other at the dinner table, our eyes locked in a gaze that spoke volumes. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "David," Veronica said softly, breaking the silence, "I can't stop thinking about that night." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "Me neither," I admitted. "But we can't keep doing this. It's wrong." Veronica stood up and walked around the table, her movements slow and deliberate. She stood beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "I know it's wrong," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. "But it feels so right." I turned to face her, my resolve crumbling. Her green eyes were filled with desire, and I felt a magnetic pull towards her. I stood up, our bodies inches apart. "Veronica, She placed a finger on my lips, silencing me. "Don't think," she said. "Just feel." Before I could protest, she leaned in and kissed me. It was a slow, passionate kiss, filled with all the pent-up longing we had been trying to suppress. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close. Our kisses grew more intense, more desperate. I ran my hands down her back, feeling the softness of her skin under my fingertips. We stumbled into the living room, our lips never parting. Veronica pushed me onto the couch and straddled me, her hands on either side of my face. "I want you, David," she said, her voice husky with desire. "I need you." Her words sent a jolt of arousal through me, and I knew I couldn't resist her any longer. I pulled her closer, our bodies pressed together. We kissed with a fervor that left us both breathless. Veronica's hands roamed over my body, and I felt a surge of desire like never before. I slid my hands under her shirt, lifting it over her head. She wasn't wearing a bra, and the sight of her bare breasts took my breath away. I kissed her neck, trailing my lips down to her chest. She moaned softly, arching her back as I took one of her nipples into my mouth. I sucked gently, my hands kneading her other breast. Veronica's hands were busy too. She unbuttoned my shirt, pushing it off my shoulders. Her fingers traced the muscles of my chest, sending shivers down my spine. She leaned in, her lips capturing mine once again. Our kisses were hungry, our need for each other palpable. We quickly undressed each other, our clothes discarded in a heap on the floor. I pulled Veronica back onto the couch, her body pressed against mine. The feel of her skin against mine was intoxicating, and I couldn't get enough. I kissed her deeply, my hands exploring every inch of her body. Veronica's touch was like fire, igniting a passion within me that I had never known. She kissed her way down my body, her lips leaving a trail of fire in their wake. When she reached my hips, she looked up at me, her green eyes filled with mischief. She took me into her mouth, and I groaned in pleasure, my hands tangling in her hair. She worked her magic, her movements slow and deliberate. I felt a wave of pleasure wash over me, and I knew I was close. "Veronica," I gasped, pulling her back up to kiss me. "I need you now." She straddled me again, lowering herself onto me. The feeling of being inside her was indescribable, a perfect blend of pleasure and need. We moved together, our bodies in perfect sync. Every thrust, every movement brought us closer to the edge. Our lovemaking was intense, a frenzy of passion and desire. Veronica's moans filled the room, mingling with my own groans of pleasure. We moved together, our bodies entwined, lost in the ecstasy of the moment. The forbidden nature of our affair only heightened the intensity, making every touch, every kiss, every thrust all the more exhilarating. As we reached our climax, I felt a rush of emotions, pleasure, guilt, desire, and regret all mingled together, leaving me breathless and spent. Veronica collapsed onto me, her body slick with sweat. We lay there, tangled together, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The aftermath of our passion was a mix of satisfaction and dread. We both knew that what we were doing was wrong, that it couldn't continue. But in that moment, with Veronica's body pressed against mine, I couldn't bring myself to care. The only thing that mattered was the connection we shared, a connection that was as undeniable as it was forbidden. We eventually untangled ourselves, dressing in silence. The weight of what we had done hung heavy in the air, but neither of us spoke. We knew that our affair had to remain a secret, hidden from Emily at all costs. But as I looked at Veronica, I knew that this was only the beginning. Our desire for each other was too strong to be denied, and I had a feeling that our secret encounters were far from over. Our stolen moments grew more frequent and daring. Emily's work schedule gave us plenty of opportunities, and we took advantage of everyone. The thrill of our secret felt intoxicating, and I couldn't resist Veronica's allure. She was unlike anyone I had ever met, and the forbidden nature of our attraction only made it more exciting. One afternoon, while Emily was out running errands, Veronica and I found ourselves alone in the house. We were in the kitchen, and the tension between us was palpable. Veronica leaned against the counter, her green eyes locked on mine. "David," she said softly, "I've been thinking about you all day." I stepped closer, unable to resist her pull. "I can't stop thinking about you either," I admitted, my voice thick with desire. I reached out and touched her face, my thumb brushing against her cheek. She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch. "Make love to me," she whispered, her voice filled with longing. Her words sent a jolt of arousal through me, and I pulled her into my arms, our lips meeting in a passionate kiss. We didn't waste any time. Our hands moved frantically, undressing each other with a desperation that left us breathless. Veronica's shirt hit the floor, followed quickly by her bra. I kissed my way down her neck, my hands exploring the softness of her skin. She moaned softly, her fingers tangling in my hair. We stumbled into the living room, our bodies entwined. I laid her down on the couch, my lips never leaving her skin. I kissed my way down her body, savoring the taste of her. Veronica's hands roamed over me, her touch sending shivers down my spine. "David," she gasped, her voice filled with need. "I need you." I positioned myself over her, our bodies aligning perfectly. With a slow, deliberate movement, I entered her. The feeling was indescribable, a perfect blend of pleasure and connection. We moved together, our bodies in perfect sync. Each thrust brought us closer, our breaths mingling, our moans filling the room. Veronica's nails dug into my back, and I could feel her body tightening around me. The intensity of our lovemaking was overwhelming, and I knew I was close. "Veronica," I groaned, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to—" "Yes," she gasped, her body arching beneath me. "Me too. Don't stop." We reached our climax together, a wave of pleasure washing over us. I collapsed onto her, our bodies slick with sweat. We lay there, tangled together, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The aftermath of our passion was a mix of satisfaction and dread. We both knew that what we were doing was wrong, that it couldn't continue. But in that moment, with Veronica's body pressed against mine, I couldn't bring myself to care. As we lay there, catching our breath, Veronica looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "David," she said softly, "this can't go on forever." "I know," I replied, my heart heavy with guilt. But I can't seem to stop. Neither can I, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But we have to be careful. If Emily finds out— She won't, I said quickly, more to reassure myself than her. We'll be careful. Our affair continued, each encounter more intense and risky than the last. We found new places to meet, new ways to steal moments together. One evening, while Emily was working late, Veronica and I made love in the guest room, our bodies moving together in a frenzied dance of lust. The forbidden nature of our relationship made every touch, every kiss, every whispered word all the more exhilarating. But as our physical relationship intensified, so did the guilt. I loved Emily, and betraying her trust weighed heavily on my conscience. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to end things with Veronica. The passion and connection we shared were too strong to deny. One night, after Emily had gone to bed, Veronica and I found ourselves alone again. We sat on the couch, the tension between us palpable. We can't keep doing this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Veronica looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of desire and determination. I know, she replied, her hand resting on my thigh. But I can't help myself. I want you, David. I need you. Her words sent a shiver down my spine, and before I knew it, we were kissing again. This time, there was no hesitation. We gave in to our desires completely, our bodies moving together in a frenzied dance of lust. Veronica's touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. I ran my hands through her hair, pulling her even closer as our kisses grew more intense. The world outside disappeared, leaving only the two of us and the overwhelming desire that consumed us. As we reached our climax, I felt a rush of emotions. Pleasure, guilt, desire, and regret all mingled together, leaving me breathless and spent. Veronica collapsed onto me, her body slick with sweat. We lay there tangled together, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The aftermath of our passion was a mix of satisfaction and dread. We both knew that what we were doing was wrong, that it couldn't continue. But in that moment, with Veronica's body pressed against mine, I couldn't bring myself to care. The only thing that mattered was the connection we shared, a connection that was as undeniable as it was forbidden. As the weeks passed, our secret affair became harder to hide. The guilt was becoming unbearable, and the risk of being caught was too high. But every time I looked at Veronica, I knew that ending our relationship was impossible. The passion we shared was too intense, too consuming to let go. The affair reached its peak during a weekend getaway that Emily had planned for us. It was supposed to be a time for us to reconnect, to enjoy each other's company without any distractions. Veronica stayed behind to house sit, giving us a rare opportunity to spend time together without any interference. But even as I tried to focus on Emily, my mind kept drifting back to Veronica. On the second night of our trip, I received a text from Veronica. I was sitting on the balcony, looking out at the ocean, when my phone buzzed. I opened the message and felt my heart race as I read her words. I miss you so much. I can't stop thinking about you. I need you. Her words ignited a fire inside me, a longing that I couldn't ignore. I looked back into the room where Emily was sleeping peacefully. I felt a pang of guilt, but the desire to see Veronica was too strong. I made an excuse to leave early, telling Emily I had an urgent work matter to attend to. She seemed disappointed, but she understood. The drive back home was a blur. My mind was consumed with thoughts of Veronica, of the way her body felt against mine, of the passion we shared. When I arrived home, Veronica was waiting for me. The moment I walked through the door, she was in my arms. We kissed hungrily, our bodies pressed together in a desperate embrace. I couldn't wait any longer, she whispered, her breath hot against my neck. I need you, David. I need you too, I replied, my voice thick with desire. I took her hand and led her to the bedroom, our bodies moving in sync. We didn't waste any time. Our clothes were quickly discarded, and we fell onto the bed in a tangle of limbs. Veronica's touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. I kissed her deeply, my hands exploring every inch of her body. She moaned softly, her fingers tangling in my hair. The intensity of our desire was overwhelming, and we moved together in a frenzied dance of lust. We made love with a fervor that eclipsed all our previous encounters. Every touch, every kiss, every thrust brought us closer together, our bodies moving in perfect harmony. The forbidden nature of our affair made it all the more exhilarating, and I felt a rush of pleasure, unlike anything I had ever experienced. Veronica's moans filled the room, mingling with my own groans of pleasure. We moved together, our bodies entwined, lost in the ecstasy of the moment. The intensity of our passion was overwhelming, and I knew I was close. "Veronica," I gasped, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going to—" "Yes," she moaned, her body arching beneath me. "Me too. Don't stop." We reached our climax together, a wave of pleasure washing over us. I collapsed onto her, our bodies slick with sweat. We lay there, tangled together, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The aftermath of our passion was a mix of satisfaction and dread. We both knew that what we were doing was wrong, that it couldn't continue. But in that moment, with Veronica's body pressed against mine, I couldn't bring myself to care. The only thing that mattered was the connection we shared, a connection that was as undeniable as it was forbidden. As we lay there catching our breath, Veronica looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "David," she said softly, "we can't keep doing this." "I know," I replied, my heart heavy with guilt. "But I can't seem to stop." "Neither can I," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we have to be careful. If Emily finds out—" "She won't," I said quickly, more to reassure myself than her. "We'll be careful." But as the days passed, our secret affair became harder to hide. The guilt was becoming unbearable, and the risk of being caught was too high. We tried to be more cautious, to limit our encounters, but the longing between us was too strong. Every stolen glance, every secret touch only fueled the fire between us. One evening, Emily came home early from work, catching us off guard. Veronica and I were in the kitchen, our bodies pressed together in a passionate embrace. We heard the front door open and panic set in. We quickly separated, trying to act normal, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Hey," Emily said, looking at us curiously. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I replied quickly, my heart racing. "Just talking." Emily seemed to buy our explanation, but I could see the suspicion in her eyes. The close call made me realize just how dangerous our affair had become. But even as the guilt and fear gnawed at me, I couldn't bring myself to end things with Veronica. The passion we shared was too intense, too consuming to let go. The climax of our affair came one night when Emily was out of town for a business trip. Veronica and I were alone in the house, the tension between us palpable. We tried to resist, to keep our distance, but the longing was too strong. We ended up in the bedroom, our bodies moving together in a frenzied dance of lust. As we lay there afterward, tangled together, the reality of our situation hit me. We couldn't keep doing this. The risk was too great, and the guilt was becoming unbearable. But even as I resolved to end things, I knew it wouldn't be easy. The passion and connection we shared were too strong to deny. The aftermath of that night was a whirlwind of emotions. Veronica and I knew our affair couldn't continue without devastating consequences. The guilt was becoming unbearable, and the risk of being caught was too high. We decided it was time to end things, no matter how painful it would be. Our final goodbye was bittersweet. We shared one last passionate embrace, holding each other as if it was the last time we would ever feel such intense desire. I promised Veronica I would always remember our time together, even though we both knew we had to move on. Ending the affair was harder than I anticipated. The memories of our secret encounters haunted me, and I struggled to focus on my marriage with Emily. I felt a deep sense of loss, not just for Veronica, but for the man I used to be before everything changed. In the weeks that followed, I tried to rebuild my life with Emily. I poured my energy into our relationship, hoping to mend the cracks that had formed. But the guilt and the memories of my affair with Veronica lingered, casting a shadow over everything. Veronica and I avoided each other as much as possible, keeping our interactions brief and polite. It was a painful but necessary distance. One afternoon, Emily suggested we go to a couples therapy session. She said she felt we had become distant and wanted to work on our relationship. I agreed, hoping it would help me move past my guilt and reconnect with her. The therapist asked us to open up about our feelings and communicate honestly. It was difficult, but I tried to be as truthful as I could without revealing the affair. In therapy, I talked about feeling overwhelmed by work and the stress of trying to support Emily and Veronica. Emily expressed her concerns about our lack of intimacy and the growing distance between us. It was painful to hear, but I knew she was right. I had been so consumed by my guilt and my feelings for Veronica that I had neglected my marriage. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Emily and I had a long conversation at home. We talked about our dreams, our fears, and our love for each other. It was a raw, honest conversation that left us both in tears. We promised to work on our relationship, to support each other, and to be more open and honest. But despite our efforts, the memories of Veronica continued to haunt me. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the passion we shared, and the connection that felt so real. It was a constant struggle to push those thoughts away and focus on Emily. One day, while Emily was at work, I found myself alone in the house with Veronica. The tension between us was palpable, but we both knew we had to maintain our distance. I busied myself with chores, trying to keep my mind occupied. But the silence was unbearable, and the memories of our affair kept creeping back. Veronica and I ended up in the same room, the unspoken tension hanging heavy in the air. She looked at me with a mixture of longing and regret, and I felt my resolve weakening. "David," she said softly, her voice filled with pain. "I miss you." "I miss you too," I admitted, my heart aching. "But we can't keep doing this. It's tearing me apart." Veronica nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know. It's just so hard." We stood there in silence, the weight of our decision pressing down on us. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, to feel her body against mine one last time. But I knew it would only make things worse. We had to let go, no matter how much it hurt. As the weeks turned into months, the distance between Veronica and me grew. She eventually moved out, finding a place of her own. It was a painful but necessary step. Emily and I continued our therapy sessions, working hard to rebuild our relationship. It was a slow and difficult process, but we were committed to making it work. Despite our efforts, I couldn't shake the memories of my affair with Veronica. They haunted me, a constant reminder of my betrayal. I loved Emily, but the passion and excitement I had experienced with Veronica were impossible to forget. I struggled with my feelings, trying to find a way to move forward without being consumed by guilt and regret. One evening, as Emily and I sat on the couch watching TV, she turned to me and took my hand. "David," she said softly, "I know things have been difficult for us, but I believe in us. I believe we can get through this." I squeezed her hand, feeling a rush of emotion. "I believe in us too," I replied, my voice filled with sincerity. "I love you, Emily, and I'm committed to making this work." We kissed, a tender and heartfelt kiss that felt like a step toward healing. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would be filled with challenges. But I was determined to rebuild my marriage and find a way to move past my affair with Veronica. As I lay in bed that night, holding Emily close, I felt a glimmer of hope. The journey to healing and redemption would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face it. I had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I was committed to making things right and rebuilding the life I had nearly destroyed. Months passed, and I continued to work on my marriage with Emily. We went to therapy regularly, had long, honest conversations, and tried to reconnect on a deeper level. But the shadow of my affair with Veronica never fully disappeared. It lingered, a constant reminder of my betrayal and the passion I had experienced. One evening, Emily and I decided to have a date night. We dressed up, went to our favorite restaurant, and tried to recapture the magic that had brought us together in the first place. The evening was pleasant, filled with laughter and good food, but there was still an undercurrent of tension. We both knew there were unresolved issues, things left unsaid. When we got home, Emily suggested we have a glass of wine on the patio. We sat together, the cool night air wrapping around us. "David," she began softly, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through." I looked at her, my heart heavy with anticipation. "What are you thinking?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know you've been trying," she said, her eyes searching mine. "And I appreciate it. But I can't shake the feeling that there's something you're not telling me, something that's still between us." I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of my secrets pressing down on me. "Emily, I hesitated, not knowing how to continue. I've made mistakes, big ones. But I love you, and I want to make this work." She took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I believe you, David. But I need to know the truth. Whatever it is, we can't move forward unless everything is out in the open." I knew she was right. The secrets, the lies, they were like a poison, slowly eroding the foundation of our marriage. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. It's not easy, and I don't know how you'll react, but you deserve to know the truth." She looked at me, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "I'm listening." I told her everything. About the affair with Veronica, the stolen moments, the intense passion we shared. I didn't spare any details, knowing that honesty was the only way to truly move forward. Emily listened in silence, her face growing paler with each word. When I finished, there was a heavy silence between us, broken only by the sound of our breathing. "David," she said finally, her voice trembling, "I don't know what to say. I'm hurt, angry, and so disappointed. But I appreciate your honesty. I needed to know." "I'm so sorry, Emily," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you. I made a terrible mistake, and I regret it every day. I love you, and I want to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I need time to process this, to figure out what I want. But thank you for telling me. It's a start." The days that followed were filled with a tense silence. Emily and I tried to carry on with our lives, but the weight of my confession hung heavy over us. I gave her space, knowing she needed time to heal. It was a painful period, filled with uncertainty and regret. Veronica had moved out by then, and we had no contact. The memories of our affair still haunted me, but I was determined to focus on Emily and our marriage. I threw myself into work, therapy, and anything that would help distract me from the pain and guilt. One evening, as I was sitting in my office, Emily walked in. She looked tired, but there was a resolve in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. "David," she said softly, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've made a decision." My heart pounded in my chest. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I want to try and make this work. I still love you, despite everything. But it's going to take time and a lot of effort from both of us." Relief washed over me, and I felt a glimmer of hope. "I'll do whatever it takes, Emily. I promise." We embraced, a tentative but hopeful step towards rebuilding our life together. It wasn't easy, and there were many difficult conversations and painful moments. But slowly, we began to find our way back to each other. The road to healing was long and fraught with challenges. The memories of my affair with Veronica never fully faded, but I learned to live with them, to let them be a reminder of the mistakes I had made and the lessons I had learned. Emily and I worked hard to rebuild our trust, to find new ways to connect and support each other. Our love grew stronger, forged in the fires of betrayal and redemption. It was a difficult journey, but one that ultimately brought us closer together. As we stood on the other side of the storm, I realized that while our marriage would never be the same, it was stronger and more resilient than before. In the end, my affair with Veronica left me with a deep sense of regret and a longing for what could never be. It was a forbidden love that burned brightly, but ultimately consumed everything in its path. The consequences of our actions were irreversible, and I had to live with the choices I made. But through it all, I learned the value of honesty, the importance of trust, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds.